And if you're on our Facebook page, you can comment below this video and be a part of this conversation that's about to happen here over the next few minutes on suicide prevention, solutions working, challenges that we're facing right here in our area and also in other states. So once again, I'm able to have guests here with me, and also we're able to patch in folks via Skype or FaceTime from anywhere in the world, really, to join in on this conversation. So you're going to see that happen in just a second. But first, I want to introduce the woman who is sitting next to me right now. This is Amy Grosso. I first want to say, though, it's also her birthday, so happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Great way to spend it.
Absolutely. We're going to hear a lot more about why Amy is so passionate about this topic. This is Amy Grosso, Round Rock ISD's Future Readiness Coordinator. She delivers mental health education on topics to students and faculty, including suicide awareness, depression, anxiety, and mental health as a school safety issue. Also, on a personal note, Amy lost her mom to suicide when she was 19, and she's also the board chair for the Central Texas chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So, Amy, thanks so much.
Really looking forward to the conversations.
And next, I want to show you how this technology works to patch in somebody who's joining us from Ohio. So this is Sarah Lee Jefferson. Hey, Sarah, wave to the folks out there if you can. If you just watched the story in our 6 o'clock newscast, you already met Sarah. So Sarah joins us from Ohio. She works for an organization called HelpLine that serves 7 counties just outside of the Columbus, Ohio area. And for that organization, her very specific purpose is delivering an evidence-based suicide prevention program to about 5,000 students a year. And she not only teaches them the signs to look for, but they also screen the students for depression and suicidal ideation. So you learned a little bit about that in the story, and we're going to extend that conversation here in this live conversation. Also, if you watch the story, you know that Sarah lost her own father to suicide when she was just 19. And the reason we wanted to bring these 2 ladies in is because they are in the trenches. They're working with students, they're working with teachers on a daily basis to help offer support for students and to really talk about suicide, which you know, a lot of people haven't talked about for years, and they haven't talked about mental illness because, as we were talking earlier, and I even posted about it on my Facebook page earlier, you know, I grew up during a time when you didn't talk about things like that. Someone said, how are you doing? You said everything's fine, and you wanted to make things look like they were going great on the outside when maybe you had some really big struggles on the inside. So first, Amy, I want to start with you. I gave a little, elevator pitch of what you do, but tell me what that looks like on a daily basis in your role at Round Rock ISD.
Right. A lot is as campuses or parents or students are wanting more information of developing curriculum around that to train. I think about a year and a half ago, we decided that it was really important that our teachers understand, and not just teachers, but all staff, what are signs, symptoms to look for, not just suicide, but even anxiety and depression, so that we're not waiting until it's a crisis and then just responding to a crisis level kind of situation. But also making sure all staff know it's not their job to fix it, just to get to the next line of help. In the same way, if a kid has 104 fever in their class, it's not their job to get the fever lowered, but it's to take them to the next step. And that's the same message we're really trying hard to get. And then also involving the parents, because clearly if the parents don't understand and aren't educated, are they going to be able to get their child help?
Yeah. All right, Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Obviously, if folks watching saw the story, they know a little bit about what you do, but if somebody didn't see the story, tell me about what you do when you personally go into schools. What does that entail? What does that look like? And how are you able to help teenagers?
Yes. So for the middle school program, that is a 2-day program where we go into the schools. The first day is primarily focused around the video, and then the next day we use as an opportunity to continue that conversation and really have a discussion with the kids. And then for the high school program, we extended it to 3 days. So the first day is similar movie, and then on the second day, we really go in and we lecture to the students and really teach them not only what to look for, but all the ways that they can get help in these situations. And then on the final day, we actually play a review game with them but this year we're actually going to have them work out different scenarios to use the steps that we're giving them. So the steps that we give them are called ACT, which is acknowledge, care, and tell. So really teaching them to not be shy about saying, hey, I noticed that you're struggling with it. But then to not just stop there, to take it a step further and really show that care piece. And care could be even just, sometimes there are no words to say. Sometimes it's just being there for that person. But then the biggest thing that we tell the students is to tell a trusted adult. So we really encourage that seeking help behavior.
So Sarah, when I was talking to Amy before we started this live stream, we were talking about HelpLine and what you do there in Ohio. And one of the things that fascinated her was how much time you're able to spend with the students when you go into the schools. You're talking, we go in for 2 days here, we go in for 3 days there, and we all know that time is precious in the classroom, and obviously academics are really important too. Are you spending full days with the middle schoolers and then full days with the high school students? And how much time are we talking, and how are you guys able to get that much time face to face with students?
Yes. So we actually see the kids in their individual classrooms. So it's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the length of the class time. And then primarily we're in the health classrooms, but in some schools we have to be in like a history class one day, then an English class the next day. So sometimes we have to be a little bit flexible about what classroom, but usually all the schools are very accommodating to our program, which we're very thankful for.
Got it. Okay, so Amy, you have read about the story, you've read about what's happening in Ohio. What do you say are some differences with that program? We were discussing earlier, this sounds like the screening is an extra step that doesn't happen, at least in Round Rock ISD and in other districts I checked with. And also the fact that Sarah is a complete stranger coming in and delivering the program. You hear about a lot of programs where it's actual staff members or health teachers or counselors.
And I think those are both the really big ones. There are very few districts in Texas, like you said, that do screeners. I know Keller ISD is one of the only ones that I know does it at 3 or 4 different grade levels, and then takes that information of how they respond to students. So that's a big difference. But another difference is it being an outside agency, and just how much trust I'm sure that took for Sarah and her staff to really build that up, because as a district, we get contacted constantly from outside agencies and just individuals, and they have the best intentions, but understanding which ones are really like the evidence-based programs that Sarah was talking about, and which are just more like, oh, this is what I think could help students. And so that's just a really long process for a district to build trust with an outside agency.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. And when we went to Ohio, I talked to probably Sarah's boss, I guess you would call her, the executive director of HelpLine, which they do a lot of different things. The suicide prevention is just one aspect of what they're doing. And they work with 7 counties and have for many years and have already built the relationships, and so they built that rapport and that trust. Am I right, Sarah, in saying that and talking to your boss there at HelpLine and the way that you've been able to build those relationships? Because obviously we're dealing with students and confidentiality and all of that.
Yes, we are very grateful for HelpLine's reputation out in the community, because I think that's another reason why we've been able to maintain our position in the schools. So we're very grateful for all of the schools still working with us.
Yeah, for sure. And is there an effort? I know you're expanding your staff. It was just you and one other person going into the schools and delivering the program, and you guys are doubling in size this school year, going from 2 to 4. Have you added campuses? Are you going to be expanding out into more counties?
We won't be expanding out to more counties, but we will be implementing a new program, which I'll talk more about here in just a little bit.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what she's saying too is that more they're known in one district or one set of schools, then another school sees that. And that's, I feel like, how you expand and trust is involved. Like, I know some of the work I've done at Round Rock ISD based on materials from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's really hard sometimes to get those in schools, but because I work there, I'm able to use some of the materials, and now other districts are seeing it, or I'm getting opportunities to talk about what I'm doing.
Yeah. Sarah, I wanted to ask you too about the screening component, since that is something different that I understand. I talked to lots of people in different areas in Ohio and looked up some information online. It seems to be a common practice there. I went all the way to Marietta, which is on the West Virginia line, and they do the screenings too. when you do the screenings, you actually give the sheet of paper to students with those 7 questions on there. How do you think that makes a difference in what you're there to do, and then how are you able to help those students even more by doing that screening?
Yes, so the screening is actually one of the 2 main pieces that make the Signs of Suicide program evidence-based. So I personally have always felt that it's one of the key parts that actually make our program worthwhile. So when we're sitting there telling the students for 3 days or 2 days to get help and to what to look for, if they start to see that in themselves, when they're faced with a piece of paper where they're having to actually answer those questions, it gives them time to reflect on, are they struggling with depression? Are they struggling with suicidal thoughts? But then it gives them an opportunity to then get the help that they need from that screening piece. Because we do give them an opportunity to say, do you need to talk to someone? But honestly, after doing this for 3 years, looking at how many needs to talks that we would get compared to how many people that would actually screen positive, you would see a tremendous, just an imbalance there. So it is very common that kids will say that they don't want to talk to someone, but then when you give them the screening piece and they trip the screening, they then get the help that they need. So I feel like that's the big reason why we've been able to help as many kids as we have.
Yeah, you were saying in the story that just aired, you immediately turn those pieces of paper over to the school counselor. We are getting some comments in on Facebook. Thank you guys for watching and for engaging in our conversation here. Claudia says the school district should consider involving senior volunteers for a buddy system with the students. Many times the parents are not involved, or maybe they don't have the time to just sit and listen to what is troubling the students. This sounds similar to maybe like a mentor program or something. Amy, does that sound like anything?
The Round Rock does have a mentoring program that's been established for over a decade, maybe 2 decades of bringing them in. And I think it's even now that while we've had mentor programs, how do we train them of what to see and what signs and symptoms? Because I think sometimes that's another group that we don't think about. And then once again, it's not your job to fix it, right? Like if you're starting to see these signs and symptoms, you need to tell somebody else. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're not trying to tell people you're a counselor or you can intervene in these situations, but you're that trusted adult they can talk to.
Yeah, I think personally, I'm a mentor in an elementary school here in Austin, and I go and eat lunch with a now 4th grader. And so I think it does scare me. Oh my goodness, if she says this or that, what is going to be my response? And maybe I'm not equipped to answer that, but I love what you're saying about you're just the person to connect them with the trained person, with the licensed therapist or counselor who does know what to say, who does know how to handle it.
Absolutely, and I think the more we talk about mental health in the same way we do physical health, then that ambiguity sort of just goes away.
Yeah, for sure. You touched on it earlier, but I loved what you said in our very first phone conversation. What you tell teachers is it's just like when you're sick, you send somebody to the doctor. Well, when you think somebody is expressing a sign of a mental illness or depression, or maybe something that sounds like it could be suicide, it's like you just need to get that person to a therapist, to a school counselor. You don't have to.
And we do some training called Youth Mental Health First Aid. It's an international program, really in-depth training. It's 8 hours for staff. And that's a huge thing of like staying in your lane, right? Like my lane isn't to fix this or to dig deeper and deeper. My lane is, what do I hear? How do I have that initial conversation? And then I always call it a warm handoff. Like how, as the adult that maybe a student told me something, how do I help make the transition to the counselor or administrator or whoever it is?
Gotcha. So the next thing I want to talk to you both about are things that you both have told me the exact same thing. We've got to reduce the stigma. We've got to talk about it more. I talked about how in my generation and my family, I grew up where we really didn't talk about our feelings, and we just said everything's fine, and on the outside it looked great. So, and Amy, we were talking earlier, and you said there's a new generation of young people where they want to talk about it, but maybe their parents come from the generation where they don't. So, Sarah, let me start with you. How do you help reduce the stigma when you say you want to get students talking about their feelings or communicating when something isn't quite right? How do you do that? What do you tell them?
So I tell them not to be scared of saying the word suicide. I think a lot of people just kind of panic about even saying that word or asking the direct question, are you thinking about suicide? But if we shy away from saying that word and shy away from asking those direct questions, we're not going to get that direct response that we need. So I always encourage the kids to not be scared to have these conversations and to realize that even adults struggle too. And sometimes adults don't know the right words to say. So I also emphasize that if they go to a trusted adult and they don't get that response that they need, then to just keep going and find another trusted adult. So there's always something that they can do. So really trying to emphasize that the more conversations we have about this stuff, the more likely someone is to actually get the help that they need.
Yeah. So Amy, you work more with teachers on the teacher level. I think as a teacher, many of them are probably scared. Okay, if a student does bring something to me, or maybe they're not as comfortable or familiar with bringing up mental health. And obviously, you don't say, let's talk about mental health. You do it in a way of how you doing today, and kind of they're picking up on signs. But what do you tell teachers to get the conversation going and to get their students talking about these things?
I often say, if you see something, say something. And I know we say that a lot with school safety, but like for a teacher, if you've noticed a very outgoing student no longer is outgoing, you can just say, hey, I've noticed you used to like be really involved in conversations, now you're not. That's all you have to say. Like, you just point out what you see. And being willing to engage in that conversation. And I think sometimes as adults we don't, because we're afraid where it will lead. But I think with proper education and training, you feel confident that you know what to do next. And I also feel like sometimes as adults we're not willing to seek help ourselves. Right? Like, I've had a student even say that, like, the biggest thing adults can do is work on their mental health, because if we don't, we can't help them. And so I often think, how are we being an example? Like, as parents even, like, are we willing to go see a counselor? Or are we just telling our student or a child, like, there's something wrong with you, you need to go. I don't, you need to. And so I think that's where a disconnect happens too.
Yeah. So thank you guys again for joining us on our Facebook page, on Facebook Live, and on KXAN.com. We've got more comments coming in, so I don't want to ignore those. Mandy Dugan, our own morning anchor and traffic reporter, says, how do you feel students are responding to watching for signs of suicide in their peers? Sarah, let's start with you on this one. Do you think they're able to do this? Are they doing a good job of it? How emotionally do they feel about being the one that is looking for that?
Honestly, kids are amazing at spotting this stuff in each other. They really are the first ones sometimes to spot it because they spend the most time with each other. So I've noticed that kids are never really shy about saying that their friend is struggling and then trying to get the friend that the friend needs help. So I've seen them even take like the needs to talk form, and they'll write on there about a friend instead of about themselves. And then that person is then called into the counseling department, and then they're able to then tell that their friend needs help. And I see that very often, which is really reassuring that the program's working.
Yeah, what I like, Sarah, is we played a small clip of the actual video that you show students when you go into the schools, part video, part guided discussion, and we asked you guys for a little example so we could use it in our story, but also watch the full clip, and they use actors, it looked like, of teenagers who are playing out these conversations that could happen in real life, and so they play an example of really not the best thing to say if your friend is telling you something, and then they give an example of the right way to say it. And I thought that really hit home with me. Okay, now you're giving me a real life example of how to say it, what to say in that moment.
Yes, and I always try and encourage the kids that if they've ever made that mistake of saying some of those things in the wrong way of ACT, that it's okay, because now they know how to actually ACT.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go to some other comments coming in on Facebook. Tiffany, thank you so much for posting and writing in. She says, what age is recommended for CBT? Our provider discouraged CBT, EMDR, and similar therapies for young children due to emotional maturity for developmental and chronological age. So, what's the right age for this kind of thing? I don't know if Sarah or Amy might be the best, but
just thinking, I mean, my background's mental health counseling. That's what my education is, and did a long time. I don't know if there's a clear cutoff, and from that question, not knowing how young the child is, with younger children, a lot of times play therapy is used. That's very appropriate. But that's definitely a decision between a counselor and a therapist and the parents and the child themselves of what they can handle and what's the best course of therapy and treatment for them. So I don't know if I've ever seen, like, there's just an age cutoff but that a provider might say that for various reasons.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not missing any of your comments coming in, but I want to turn to some of the other questions that I've got for Amy and Sarah. Let's see here. So, Amy, one of the interesting things that you said during our first phone conversation, there we go, you said our society as a whole has done a really bad job when it comes to mental health. Why and how do you think we can change that?
You know, and I think we're slowly seeing it. You know, I think 20 years ago, and after I lost my mom, and talking about suicide or mental health, and it's totally different now, but I still think we're not there. You know, I still think a lot of times in mental health, we're now more accepting of, oh, it's great if you need it, but I'm never going to need that, or not my child. And I just think it's the way we viewed it through history. It's very hard to understand. And I think if you've never experienced, it's easy to think it's just like something you can control, right? Like depression is what, just choose to be happy. And that's easy to say if I haven't experienced it. We're very judgmental, like with suicide, how judgmental we are of people who die by suicide and words we use to describe that. And so I think we're slowly seeing a change, but I think it's going to take a while to catch up to how we view physical health.
Yeah. So Sarah, overall, I'll ask you the same question that I was just asking Amy is, how do you think that we can do better?
Yes, so I agree with Amy that when we talk about teaching the kids these signs and what to do, that we need to also then take it a step further and make sure that we're also training the adults that we're telling them to go to. So I'm really excited that one of the reasons why we got one of the new educators was because we're now launching QPR, which is the new CPR for suicide prevention. So what that stands for is question, persuade, and refer. So again, going back to asking that direct question, but then persuading that person. So it kind of is like the CARE, the ACT piece of really persuading that person to get the help that they need. Because when someone's struggling with this stuff, it's almost sometimes impossible for them to get the help that they need and take those steps. So I feel like the more people that we train to be merchants of hope, the more likely we are to see the numbers reduced. But we need to train as many people as possible, because a lot of times that person can't get the help that they need and they need someone to help them.
And I feel like that's why the parent education part is so critical, because we can identify as educators or as students, like in our friend, but if parents aren't willing to take their child to get help because they think, oh, they're fine, like it's just they're a teenager, right? Like everybody struggles, that our students aren't getting the help they need. And so I really find it like, how do we reach parents, not just parents who opt into a session on mental health, but how do we reach the parents that don't opt into this type of training sessions or education opportunities?
Yeah, Sarah had mentioned QPR when we went out to Ohio, and then I've heard other people using that acronym, and it's powerful because CPR obviously is a place to save somebody's life, and then so is QPR, because you're essentially, potentially saving somebody's life if you're able to intervene and get them the help that they need. And so I foresee us here at KXAN doing more stories, doing at least another story as we extend this Save Our Students series on QPR and looking into that. I think AISD does some QPR training as I was looking up the mental health programs in their district as well. So more on that to come. Let me check the time here. 6:40. Okay, we're doing all right, but I do know that we want to get to some other things as far as resources that you guys think are important that we have available to you as well on our special SaveOurStudentsTX.com website. So I think our digital guru here, who's helping punch up all the cameras, Andrew's going to help bring some of the websites up. And Amy, you can start with one of the biggest resources when someone's just saying, I don't know what to do. Where do I start? Where do you send them?
I send them to afsp.org. And so it gives a wide variety of like, what is suicide? What are resources? What do I look for? It's not a helpline or anything, but they give help information. And so I know he has that pulled up now. And so also right there, the C's, the awkward, It's the yellow box. That's for students, really. It was a campaign with the Ad Council, and it's really targeted towards teenagers, college students, and how do you have that awkward conversation? So there's lots of good information, really funny videos that sort of breaks it up, hard topic, and then they have some like YouTube personalities. I've shared this with students. I don't know who the YouTube personalities are, but they all do. Clearly, I'm showing my age. But it's a great resource for students to really understand in a fun way, how can I bring up these conversations?
Yeah, just glancing at those videos, it looks like something you'd watch on Netflix right now, and it's really teen geared. Okay, Sarah, I want to point people as well to your HelpLine website, which I went to a number of times when researching this story, and there's a lot there, and you can see the phone numbers and who to text there at the top. And you guys also work with a national organization, so even if someone doesn't live in Ohio and you live here in Texas or you live somewhere else, you can still access and utilize these support services.
Yes, and also we answer calls in our area for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So there's several different ways that you can get in contact with us. Even if you call that number, you can still reach HelpLine, or you could call 1-800-684-2324. And our text feature is available 24/7, just like our phone line. So you can always text the word HelpLine to 898-211. And just realize that you're never alone. And sometimes it's easier to text in versus saying it out loud. So all those options are available.
And one thing with her saying about the National Lifeline number, the 1-800-273-TALK, it's been passed and stuff, but Congress this last year really looked into making that a 3-digit number, and so we know it's coming. So that would be a 3-digit number like 911, but for basically suicide prevention. And so that should be coming in the next year or so nationally.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know at HelpLine, if you're in those 7 counties that HelpLine serves in Ohio, 211 is the number directly to their hotline, which is really easy to remember. Also, I want to show you guys some pictures that I took when I was in Delaware, Ohio, which is where Sarah is joining us from right now. Just so you can get an idea, this is our photographer, Chris Nelson, shooting the interview with us with Sarah there in her office at their headquarters in Delaware. And then let's see what's going to pop up next. There you go. If you saw the story earlier on our air, that what we're seeing here, Sarah, I know you can't see it right now, but this is the framed Post-it note, the last note that your dad wrote you before you lost him. And so I know that's very personal to you, and a daily reminder of really why you do what you do, and the kiddos that you're helping on an everyday basis. And then this next photo is so powerful. This is on the downtown square in Delaware, Ohio. So they're not just, talking the talk with the signs that say mental health matters there on their downtown square, but then just 2 or 3 blocks away is Sarah's office and her headquarters, where they're really living this stuff each and every day and extending their services out into the community, which is paid for, a huge chunk of it is paid for with county tax dollars. So, and voters had to approve a levy to make this happen, and so they're saying this is important to us. We want the conversation to be out front on mental health, and we don't want to hide it, and we want to get the conversation going in our own community and put programs in place to save lives. And then also I want to show you guys, if you don't know about our resources that we've got with the Save Our Students project, we've got a special website, not just KXAN.com, but we've designed a special website called Save Our Students TX, and there is a resource page that you can go to turn to, and we've put a ton of resources there. If we scroll down just a little bit, there we go. There's a box with a ton of resources on where you can turn for help if you have questions about anything, and so that's a good source as well. And then if we've got more, and let me just add while we're on this webpage, the SaveOurStudentsTX.com, every single story that we have done over the last few months that we're rolling out this week on air, it's online. So you can go there right now and read through the stories of the solutions that we have learned about over the last few months, not just here in Central Texas, but in West Texas. You're going to see that story soon. I traveled there to tell some stories about a program, and then also went to Ohio, as you know, and also went to California. And so this page has everything that you need to know about this project. So that's a really cool spot to visit. And then also on Facebook, where many of you are right now, we have a special group. It's called Save Our Students. You just type that into the top search bar and it'll pop up. And we are so thankful to folks that have been joining that Facebook page over the last couple of days as we've told you about it. And that is going to be a central point of information. We're posting about the stories as well, but then we also have a town hall coming up next Monday for sure. We might have a second one in the works we're going to tell you about a little bit later in the week. The first town hall is happening at Stony Point High School in Round Rock, and Amy's going to be there as well. And then there's another one that we're going to make closer to home for folks that live in Austin, and that is coming about midweek. And so just watch that Facebook page, and it's going to tell you everything that you need to know. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us from Ohio, for being a part of our story and then agreeing to join us here for this extended conversation on our new KXAN Live platform. And so again, thank you guys. We are so passionate about this project and just the fact that we are getting the conversation going, and we are rolling out solutions that we have found working, not just here at home, but across the country. And we've been getting some really positive feedback from you guys on our Facebook page. I've been getting personal text messages from people really excited about this project, and that makes us excited. And so thank you again. We know your time is important to you, and we thank you so much for spending it with us tonight. We will see you the next conversation, and keep watching for these stories on air on KXAN as well. Thank you guys, and have a great night.